Those are the latest headlines for now. More at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, Keir Starmer confirmed the worst-kept secret in Westminster this morning when he confirmed that the under 16-year-olds will be banned from social media. Have a listen to what he said.
I fundamentally believe that we must harness the power of technology to build a stronger, fairer Britain. But we must also protect our children. And so I want this message to be heard loud and clear. I am not prepared to compromise on the safety and happiness of our children. And that is why this ban must happen, and that is why this ban will happen.
Well, our political editor Christopher Hope asked the Prime Minister if a future government might use the powers they're bringing in to ban people they don't like from social media.
It's not about free speech, it's about basic protection of children. And to take other examples, Chris, look, I'm a great advocate of free speech, I really am. But sending sexually explicit pictures to and from children, that's not free speech. That's basic protection. It's got nothing to do with technology. We have protected our children from that sort of harm for years in this country. We're right to do so. What we're doing now is making sure that it's fit for purpose in the world we actually live in.
Well, the Prime Minister says he hopes to get legislation through Parliament before Christmas, with platforms including TikTok, Instagram and Snapchat potentially affected.
Ofcom said it's ready to work with the government to build on this progress with new measures to protect children. Of course, this all assumes that he's still Prime Minister at Christmas, which is
still a very good point, Andrew.
Assumption.
May not be.
We're going to talk now to Maxwell Marlowe, who is the Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. Adam, 90% of parents want this. What's your view?
That it won't work, and the evidence shows that quite sharply, really. So they've tried this in Australia, where the Antipodean seemed to be a great place to start bad policy, and we seem to adopt it quite easily. So we know that from Australia, for example, 60% of children have already got round the ban.
By giving a different birth date?
A different birth date, they're using different apps. They're using WeChat, actually, which is the Chinese social media version of WhatsApp, for example.
Right.
That's not in the ban list, for example, so we'll see that happen. They're using VPNs, which are virtual private networks, and I've asked policymakers, can you describe to me what a VPN is or does? And they can't tell me.
Can you describe it to me? Because I'm not really sure what a VPN is.
Well, all it does, it basically routes your internet connection to a different server and encrypts it. So therefore, the government can't see what you're doing.
I see.
So young people already know how to use this stuff. So the government's already on the back foot, and they're going to remain on the back foot. And one of my big problems is the way in which we use social media now through law enforcement, for example, to actually protect children, that's going to be completely washed aside, and we see elements of this starting up in Australia as well.
I mean, the Australian campaigners would say that the progress of the legislation is not complete yet. The platforms have not actually been forced by law to ban children from their platforms. It's been voluntary so far. The Australian e-safety commissioner says she's going to crack down on it. So, in a way, we're in the very early stages of this policy. I don't think it's possible to say whether it's a success or failure yet. But in principle, if this could be done cleanly, if there could be an age gate that doesn't infringe on adults' freedom of speech or adults' privacy, would you be supportive of the government essentially saying to under 16s this isn't a suitable product for you?
I'd be more supportive of parents actually taking charge of the matter, to be honest. We know that social media companies actually take this incredibly seriously. The amount of money that pours into safety provision for children and to show parents how to manage these devices and applications is startling. I mean, we're talking billions of pounds here. Do we really think the government getting involved is going to make things better? And a lot of the problems here are caused by things like lockdown, for example, kids being forced onto their phones because the government decided to take decisions,
but in the
which were
inquest into the death of Molly Russell, who took her own life after seeing suicide content on Instagram, it became very clear that Instagram Meta knew about this content. They knew the age of the children on the platforms, and yet they refused to take it down because of user creativity. I can't remember the phrase that was used. So the tech companies might be pumping billions into this, but I don't think the evidence shows that they do really care. They just want children's attention because time is money.
Well, I mean, that's a fair point. We know Molly Russell's father has come out against this ban, for example. He said
the Molly Russell Foundation has taken quite a lot of money from Pinterest and Meta. That is a matter of public record.
Of course it is, but at the same time, we can also see from, again, the evidence that this is not going to work. And I agree that Meta is not a very well-behaved company. Don't get me wrong. Doesn't mean that I think the British government is acting correctly here. Even the Prime Minister announcing the policy this morning pointed out all the flaws in his own policy and legislation, which I thought that's a really interesting way to sell it to the country.
Because we know he's in a hurry.
He's in a hurry. He's got somewhere to be.
Because there's a big thing happening later in the week, which we're not going to get into. And look, you get this world, which I don't get at all. Is there a way the government can do this where it will work?
It will have to work closely with social media companies. It's currently refusing to, and it's very interesting.
Why?
It's politics. You know, could you really imagine the Prime Minister coming out after this ban saying, "Oh no, I've just been lots of meetings with Meta and X and whatever else"? Yeah, you know, I think the people pushing for this ban really strongly are going to be all over the Prime Minister. So I don't think he's going to want to be seen to do that. We already know Ofcom have a bit of a frightening relationship with social media companies, especially X with Elon Musk, and I think a lot of it is motivated by that politics. Fundamentally, they do want to stand up to the trillionaire and try and crack down on this area. So I'm really worried about this for the health of our own children, which is fundamentally that I'm worried they're going to be moved into corners of the dark web where no one can keep an eye on them, and they'll have access to loads of harmful content.
So that would make it worse.
I think it is going to make it worse fundamentally.
Can we talk about your comments about parenting? So I think, you know, lots of our viewers and most sensible people would absolutely agree that the government should keep out of the fundamentals of parenting children. I mean, the idea that the government or schools should be responsible for brushing your children's teeth, I think most people would say that's a massive overreach. But there is this crossover, isn't there, to the world of product regulation. For example, most of us accept that it's right to have a law banning the sale of alcohol to under 18s. We accept that the government should regulate roads and food products and things like that so that they're generally safe for children. Given that the vast majority of parents with teens, so the people living through this massive technological transition, want this, doesn't this suggest to you that it's a different matter to something like teaching your child to brush their teeth or deciding when your child should come home at night? Sure.
So it's interesting you mentioned that last bit. You know, the government's trying to put a curfew in place now, which I think is fascinating, on 16 and 17-year-olds for social media use. But also, I think the alcohol point is very good. So the Prime Minister actually referenced it during his speech. He said, you know, we wouldn't, give up on banning alcohol because, because some teenagers drink. The difference is, though, is that if a teenager used to drink, they're accessing, regulated legal products, fundamentally. That's why, if they start drinking moonshine and distilled alcohol, that's when we'd start to call this sort of thing into question. Yeah. This is the problem with this ban, which is that we're banning the legal, safer platforms in order for, in order to achieve a policy aim, which I think, again, is going to be more harmful.
The thing that also stood out for me, a curfew for youngsters up to the age of 18 at 8:30 at night. Well, they obviously don't know much about 17-year-olds I know. Good luck with 8:30. How would that work?
I'll be honest, I have no idea. I don't think it's going to work. So when I was growing up...
it works in China, but that tells you what you know about Iran,
so that's fine. But the thing... So when I was growing up, for example, my parents were kind of... My dad's an IT guy. He understands this sort of stuff, social media particularly. My parents would take my phone off me before I go up to bed. Sure. They take my controllers off me for my PlayStation. Same with all my siblings, same with all my friends at school. It seems like we've forgotten that, I think. And that's what I find really strange about this, is that you can't access most of these features if you don't have the device itself, and yet we see people complaining about my kids, staying up late at night scrolling on TikTok. Why on earth? Is that because their parents say help us because they won't? If we try and take the device off them, the kids kick off. But that's the job of parents.
But lots of children do have two phones. This is a thing. But do you think, it is highly unlikely that these kind of laws are going to work instantly, as we've seen in Australia. But do you think there is a value in this for driving change in social norms, like we've seen in all sorts of other regulatory landscape, whether you agree with them or not? Smoking ban, changes to how we talk about drink driving, wearing seatbelts. They eventually drive social norms, and even if this is insufficiently be effective in getting all 16-year-olds off social media, let's say, is there not a value in changing the norm so that kids who are currently 8 or 9 know that they can't expect to get on Instagram, to get on Snapchat the minute they turn 11 or 12? And eventually we will get there, like we have with other industrial revolutions.
Well, I think, OK, so it's a good point, and it's very well made. I think when you look at why the social media ban in Australia is failing specifically, it's because there are kids who see their friends who are breaking the law, and they're going, that's really cool, we need to start doing that. So it kind of proliferates as such. The same with the smoking ban, for example. You know, kids sneaking cigarettes on the back of the bike sheds at school happen at my school all the time. You know, I'm a nerd, I wouldn't do that, obviously. But you know, and for clarity, mum and dad watching, I didn't do that. But this is the thing, which is that, you know, you're right, these are changes to social norms that do need to happen. And I think it's down to, you know, children to, you know, create those social norms for themselves to do that. I don't think the government's going to be doing that, especially when it's so dangerous. And I've seen, you know, it's been fascinating keeping up the discourse on this. People who've been really pushing for this policy, saying they rather their children smoked than access social media. Smoking kills 75,000 people a year in this country, and they'd rather their children smoke.
It does, but I think a lot of parents would say, of teens, you know, I am one of them, is that social media is robbing children of their childhood in a way that cigarettes doesn't. I'm not saying cigarettes are good, of course not. But I think the change in dynamic of childhood exactly has been... Anyway, fascinating debate. Really we'll continue for some time.
The government has months to get this right, or to improve it.
Or to get it wrong.
Well, there we are.
Or to drop it altogether in response to lobbying.
Well,
long way to go.
Mr. U-turn.
Indeed, we might have another Mr. U-turn as well.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Not Here Keir, he's off to France with our very own political editor, of course. There's a G7 summit coming up.
Well, Max Marlowe, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Very good to talk to you too. And we're very reassured to hear about you and the bicycle sheds. In relation to the case of Molly Russell, Meta have previously said
teen mental health is profoundly complex and cannot be linked to a single app. We will continue to defend ourselves vigorously as every case is different, and we remain confident in our record of protecting teens online.
Now, still ahead, the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch saying that she could help him cut welfare spending to support defence spending. She knows that's never going to happen. She's just being very mischievous, but we'll be there for her speech. And on that note...
Up next, the Prime Minister is going to tell his new Defence Secretary there'll be no more cash for the military. Tanks, but no tanks.
Yeah, but first, here's the forecast for some top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Occasional showers in places, but actually we've got high pressure building across Europe, so many areas will be mostly settled. We'll see some bits of cloud around coastal areas at times. This should burn back quite nicely through the course of Tuesday. Occasional showers across parts of Spain, Sicily, but actually for most it's going to be dry, settled, plenty of sunshine. This is going to continue through the week, and also temperatures are on the rise as well, pushing into the mid-30s for some towards the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
You're a stripper for nearly 20 years now.
Yeah.
And what you do now has changed. How has it changed and why?
I think beforehand they would book you individually. There would be a lot of stripograms, and that would be bookings for like birthdays, hen parties, and ultimately you would probably be around their house or something like that, or in a small bar. What it's kind of moved into now is more shows. Dream Boys, it's really popular. It's up and down the country, and what you'll find is they'll get 20, 30 girls together and they'll go out and they'll go to the show because they've got the drag queen, they've got the dancers, they've got the stripper, they've got the whole night's entertainment.
Is that because they feel uncomfortable with the stripper, or is it a woke thing? Is it like it's about objectifying you because they don't objectify themselves, so why should you be objectified?
I think it could be possibly a bit about... some of them might think if we get them around the house, there might be a person that's uncomfortable with it. Whereas if they book the show, you're free to go to the show or not.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess Anne and the way that she has brought up her family is really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, you've got daughter and son who've not taken on royal titles, who've just got on with their lives.
I think now, in retrospect, we can say it was an inspired decision of the Royal Princess Anne not to have her husband receive a Grand Peerage title, which meant, of course, that her children would just be plain Mr. and Mrs. Zara is Mrs. Tyndall, he is Mr. Phillips, and that's allowed them actually to have a much more normal life, not being in the necessary glare that attaches when you have the HRH prefix to your name and become a duke or a duchess or whatever. And yes, they have had great lives in the private sector.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dorothea served in preparation for D-Day. And Dorothea, how does it feel being here today, joining other veterans?
We suddenly felt that it had been worthwhile giving up our youth, our years as teenagers. No such things existed. You were a child until you were 14 or 16, depending on the year. And after that, OK, you're fit to be killed for the country. And it was naturally assumed that everybody would willingly do their bit for England. And they would have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes to 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, Britain's armed forces have intercepted and seized a Russian Shadow Fleet vessel, finally, in the English Channel. It's the first operation of its kind since the Prime Minister said he'd stop all of them which were going through the Channel.
Well, at the same time, it's reported that Sir Keir Starmer will not commit any more money to the military, much to the disappointment of his new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis.
Well, let's talk to GB News Chief Political Correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, I think we're going to hear from Dan Jarvis today, I think. Is he going to be talking to the Commons?
Yes, I believe he's speaking to the Commons this afternoon, specifically, I think, around that operation at the weekend. Very impressive, wasn't it? But of course, those boats, those ships have been going through the Channel for months and months. This is the first time that we've acted. But there seems to be some confusion around defence spending now, because following the resignation of the Defence Secretary, John Healey, and the Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, it sounded like Dan Jarvis, the new Defence Secretary, was likely to be able to extract more money from the Treasury. Rachel Reeves and Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, only yesterday was on telly talking about live discussions in departments about what could be cut to fund defence. Exceedingly embarrassing, of course, that the Prime Minister is now heading off to the G7, where Donald Trump and other leaders will be. Donald Trump has demanded, and we have agreed, to spend 5% on defence by 2035. At the moment, we're only at about 2.4. We're going to get to 2.6 next year. But then, between then and 2030, only an additional 0.08%. John Healey thought that was absolutely unacceptable and resigned because of it. But now we're hearing that Dan Jarvis, the new Defence Secretary, isn't likely to get any more money either. He pledged at the weekend that he would make sure that the military got what they need, but the Telegraph are saying that the $13.5 billion award over 4 years extra still stands, which means that he is likely to have to find some cuts, which obviously could be very, very difficult indeed.
Fascinating, Catherine. It makes you wonder all the more why Dan Jarvis took that job. Because he's an ex-military man, he's a major, served in Afghanistan. I pointed out in the Mail today, he's still got shrapnel in his brain.
Really?
From military service in Afghanistan in 2007, yeah.
Well, maybe he feels like somebody has to hold the can, at least for now, during the time of political turmoil.
And he gets to get a cabinet. He's a cabinet that's nested ahead.
President Macron will be putting on a fancy dinner for Keir Starmer, and they'll be talking defence as well. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine and dry weather around today, feeling warm where we see any sunny spells, though we are expecting some spots of rain this morning. This mostly across Northern Ireland, northwest Wales, central and southeast England. We have a band of showers moving their way northeastwards, and we may hear the odd rumble of thunder associated with these. Otherwise, it should be mostly dry, though there's a fair amount of cloud starting to push into the west, this turning fairly low across southern coasts of Wales, southwest England, so a little bit disappointing here. But otherwise, in any bright or sunny spells, feeling warm, temperatures widely pushing into the mid-20s. Now, as we progress later on into the day, gradually turning more unsettled across the north, these showers will push their way northeastwards across Scotland, merging into longer spells of rain, turning that a little bit heavy across the hills. Plenty of cloud to finish off the day across Northern Ireland, some showers here, similar across many northern areas of England. Now, elsewhere across England and Wales, it should be mostly dry, just a few showers starting to clip in to the west by the end of the day, but quite a lot of cloud around into the evening, some quite low cloud leading to some murky conditions, and this will be thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And this rain across parts of the north will continue to be heavy, especially across the hills, perhaps a little bit blustery as it drifts its way northeastwards, but a much milder start to Tuesday compared to what we've had this morning. Temperatures across the south not dropping much past the mid-teens. Now, on Tuesday, once again, we've still got this rain across the far north of Scotland. It'll eventually clear its way northeastwards. Lots of clouds, still some spots of rain and drizzle following on behind. Turning a little bit brighter for some areas into the afternoon, but once again, a return of the rain across Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall later into the day, and this could turn heavy. The best of the brightness is going to be across the far east, highs reaching 26 Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A83 at Locknell Street in Loch Gilphead is closed for maintenance. Congestion is affecting the M4 eastbound near junction 33 at Capel Lanilturn. The M53 southbound entry slip at junction 4 on the Wirral is closed due to a police incident, expected to clear by 12:52. 2 lanes are closed on the M5 northbound in Worcestershire between junctions 5 and 4A due to a collision, with recovery anticipated after 10:22. A vehicle fire has resulted in 1 lane closed on the A13 eastbound exit slip to the M25 near Thurrock. And on the trains, there is major disruption on the Elizabeth line between London Paddington, Heathrow Terminal 5 and Reading. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won.
Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. 1 entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 15th of June. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Breaking news, finally, the social media crackdown, it's official.
I can announce that the government will ban access to social media for all children under the age of 16.
Well, the Prime Minister's ban will come into force early next year and curfews will be enforced for older teenagers.
As a peace deal finally agreed, US President Donald Trump declares let the oil flow as a peace pact between US and Iran is reached.
And a military budget battle. The Prime Minister tells the new Defence Secretary that there is no more cash.
So can the Prime Minister tell us why on his watch, for the first time ever, we are now spending more on welfare than we earn in income tax?
Defence over dole. This morning, the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, will tell the Prime Minister to cut welfare to fund warfare. Don't miss it.
Meanwhile, a Russian tanker was seized. Royal Marines intercepted a Shadow Fleet tanker in British waters. It's now being detained off the south coast. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Quinn said it was a huge success.
The dialogue that we had with them was professional, safe, and indeed the crew enabled us to conduct the actions that we needed to complete to safely take control of that vessel.
Well, today, Scotland's enjoying a World Cup bank holiday after beating Haiti in their opening game of the World Cup. Now, I can't believe Donald Trump, being as outspoken as he is, he's not going to raise with the Prime Minister the fact that he lost his Defence Secretary, John Healey, last Thursday. The increase that the Chancellor's permitted in defence spending is so minuscule, it infuriated the Defence Secretary, who walked out when we've got war in Ukraine, war in Iran, an astonishing political state of affairs. Trump wants us to raise spending of our percentage of our economy to 5%. We're barely on 2.6.
It's not a good message to our allies, isn't it? And that the Poles have massively increased their defence spending by over 4% of GDP now. The Germans, the head of the Luftwaffe this morning has said that Germany is ready for war. They've put huge amounts of money in. It does look pretty pathetic, doesn't it? I mean, we've had this amazing operation. Well done to the Royal Marines storming that tanker. But still, very small...
But that's the first time, and those Russian tankers have been going through the channel for months. And I think the timing of the G7 summit, when he's strutting his stuff with world leaders, is not a coincidence.
No, I agree. And also, having lost his Defence Secretary and Armed Forces Minister, saying that he was unable to get the money out of the Chancellor to defend the country, I think perhaps proving a point that he could defend the country.
Absolutely. As ever, tell us what you think. Send your views and post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/yoursay. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much and good morning. The top story. Sir Keir Starmer has announced under-16s will be banned from a range of social media in what he's called a big moment for our country. Children's charity, the NSPCC, described the ban as a win for children and parents and all of us who've campaigned for better child protection online. The UK follows Australia's example in raising the minimum age to 16 for sites including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and Snapchat.
Fundamentally believe that we must harness the power of technology to build a stronger, fairer Britain. But we must also protect our children. And so I want this message to be heard loud and clear. I am not prepared to compromise on the safety and happiness of our children. And that is why this ban must happen And that is why this ban will happen.
Shadow Education Secretary Laura Trott spoke to GB News Breakfast this morning about the ban.
This is something that we actually do have at the moment. So the Online Safety Act brought in age gating where it comes to pornography sites, and that's actually been very effective so far at reducing the number of children who are accessing porn sites. So this would be something that would come in more broadly for social media. It is working in Australia, it's had some bumps, but it is already making a bit of a change in terms of how safe children feel online there. And as I said, this is a long-term project to show that social media is not safe for children.
National Crime Agency officers have arrested an Indian national on suspicion of sanctions offences after the seizure of a Russian oil tanker in the English Channel yesterday. Royal Marine Commandos and specially trained officers boarded the oil tanker, supported by the RAF in the early hours of this morning. The NCA saying 24 Georgian and Indian crew members remained aboard the vessel anchored off the Dorset coast. US President Donald Trump has announced a peace deal to end the war with Iran is complete. Pakistan's Prime Minister saying both sides agreed to the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. That's despite Israeli strikes in Beirut yesterday, which Iran had threatened to retaliate against. Donald Trump had posted on his Truth Social website authorising the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the removal of the United States naval blockade. There is cautious optimism on financial markets that the US-Iran peace deal will ease the hit to the global economy caused by their war. An official signing ceremony will take place on Friday in Switzerland. Elsewhere, foreign criminals involved in serious and organised crime, including those operating networks moving illegal migrants across continents, will be identified more quickly as UK police gain faster access to European vehicle data. Officers will reportedly now be able to receive key information in seconds rather than days or even months. Previously, delays slowed investigations into criminal gangs involved in smuggling migrants, illicit drugs and illegal weapons into the UK. A large-scale Russian attack on Ukraine has killed 5 rescue workers in Kharkiv and 4 people in Kyiv. A strike set apartment buildings ablaze and sparked a fire at one of the country's most significant religious landmarks. The fresh strikes came after Ukraine's President Zelensky said he'd spoken to Donald Trump yesterday and discussed efforts to achieve an end to the 4-year conflict ahead of a G7 meeting in France this week. A UNESCO World Heritage Site in Kyiv, founded in 1051, was seriously damaged in what the Ukrainian Prime Minister called a brutal assault on our people and our heritage. Marius Borg Høiby, the 29-year-old son of Norway's crown princess, has been found guilty of 2 counts of rape and given 4 years in prison. The 3 judges at Oslo District Court cleared him of 2 other counts of rape, but found him guilty of many of the other offences of which he'd been accused. Prosecutors had called for Høiby to be given 7 years and 7 months in prison. His defence lawyers had called for a lesser term of 18 months and can appeal against the verdict. Høiby had denied all 4 counts of rape, but the judges convicted him of raping 2 women, including one on the Crown Prince's estate in 2018 and another involving a woman in Oslo in 2024. He was also convicted of abusing an ex-girlfriend, Norwegian influencer Nora Hawkland. Authorities say 12 people have been killed after a plane taking people up to skydive crashed in Missouri. The crash occurred near to the Butler Memorial Airport, around 65 miles south of Kansas City. Missouri State Highway Patrol Sergeant Justin Ewing says the emergency responders got a call that a plane was down and engulfed in fire around 11:30 a.m. local time on Sunday. He says emergency responders were able to extinguish the fire after the crash and called the scene brutal. Roy Hattersley, who served as deputy leader of the Labour Party under Neil Kinnock, has died at the age of 93. He served as a cabinet minister in the 1970s and became the party's deputy leader in opposition for 9 years following its historic defeat to Margaret Thatcher's Conservatives in 1983. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer paid tribute to Lord Hattersley as a giant of the Labour movement. And some breaking news now that investigative journalist Roger Cook, best known for current affairs programme The Cook Report, has died at the age of 83, his family says. More on that story in the next half an hour.
can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Hello, good morning and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So Keir Starmer has confirmed, it was probably the worst kept secret at Westminster, wasn't it, that the under-16s will be banned from social media. This is what he said at a Downing Street briefing this morning.
I fundamentally believe that we must harness the power of technology to build a stronger, fairer Britain. But we must also protect our children. And so I want this message to be heard loud and clear. I am not prepared to compromise on the safety and happiness of our children. And that is why this ban must happen, and that is why this ban will happen.
Well, let's speak now to Jennifer Powers, who's the founder of the Unplugged Coalition. Jennifer, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Britain's Newsroom. Now, there's been growing consensus in the last couple of years, Jennifer, that social media is really bad for children and it's robbing them of all sorts of childhood experiences, as well as presenting some specific dangers like being contacted by strangers. But lots of people saying this morning that while this ban might be well-intentioned, it just won't work. What do you say to that?
Oh, good morning, Miriam. Good morning, Andrew. This is a victory for childhood. I couldn't be more pleased. And to those who criticize and say it won't work, I say, listen, if it keeps half of the children off social media half of the time, that is a massive win. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. There are children that will try to get around any bans, just like with the speed limit. There are people who speed and receive tickets, and it doesn't mean that we get rid of all the speed limits. So I'm really hopeful that this will be an important first step. I think this is a watershed for children and families in this country, and I'm absolutely delighted that the Prime Minister has changed his mind on this and brought in, or at least announced, his intention that the government will bring in restrictions for platforms to no longer be able to access and harm our kids.
To iron out some of the flaws, the problems that we've seen in Australia, Jennifer, for instance, I know a lot of the kids there are getting new accounts with fake birth dates. Does the government need to work with the social media giants to make sure this is as watertight as possible?
Yes, you make an excellent point, because some of the problems we've seen in Australia is because the tech platforms have not been sufficiently held to account. They've been lax in terms of their checks. They have allowed many children under 16 to either create or stay on their social media accounts on these addictive by design platforms. And what we want to see here in Britain is we want to see really robust age assurance mechanisms, so that, yes, of course, one or two children may get around it, a few may get around it, but the vast majority of children are protected most of the time. So this will mean the government needs to hold the line and needs to not cave in to the lobbying of the tech platforms, who will, of course, want to water down the strength and effectiveness of those checks, because this is the attention economy. They make money by having eyeballs on the internet. They don't want to lose children and teens from their platforms. So it's in their interest to make those age assurance checks as flimsy as possible. So this will mean the government has to be really on top of them and make sure that they are doing what we know they can do. They know so much about us. They are so technically adept at building these platforms and keeping us attuned. It's absolute nonsense that they can't keep children off if they wanted to. So the sanctions need to be really tight as well, really strong, so that if they are found wanting, that they're hitting the pocketbook.
Jennifer Powers, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Jennifer is the founder of the Unplugged Coalition.
Well, and he's saying next year, I mean, there'll be cross-party support for it.
I think so. I mean, the polling support for this is enormous.
Huge.
I think the question is how, isn't it? How do you do it, and how do you make sure it works? And how do you come up with a way of verifying age that doesn't impinge on privacy? It's absolutely possible. It's just whether or not the social media companies
They've got to work with them. They have to work with them.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they can just throw a spanner in the
But
works.
they'll only do that if there are sanctions for not doing it, because we've seen over the last 10 years repeatedly big tech trying to destroy any attempt to regulate and keep children safe, because it makes them money, makes them so much money.
They're the masters of the universe, powerful and wealthy. Now, moving on, the US and Iran say a peace deal that paves the way for further talks to end the war in the Middle East is imminent.
Well, the two sides will come together in Switzerland on Friday to sign this peace deal.
We're going to talk to the Iranian journalist Mani Bashazad, who joins us now. Good morning to you. Can I ask you, from an Iranian perspective, the damage this war has done to your country, how important is it on a, excuse me, purely humanitarian level that this war comes to an end very quickly?
Good morning. The economic cost of this war, as the government of Iran has said, has been more than $200 billion. And from the unemployment numbers that we have been seeing from the sources from Iran, more than 1 million people have been unemployed. Now the question is, the reality is, there has been a big harm from the war. What's going to happen next? And what's going to happen next with the deal in power? There are three main problems with the deal. So it's not going to just end the war. What's going to happen is there are three problems. The first one is the problem of commitment. I do not think so. There's going to be a big commitment to the deal by the side of the Iranian. Why? For example, when the peace talks were happening in Pakistan a couple of months ago, 70 people from the Iranian delegation team went there. It's quite an odd thing, isn't it? 70 people from a team, from a country going for negotiations. What's the reason for that? The reason is Iran is getting closer and closer to a failed state because different fractions of power do not trust each other. Bahidi doesn't trust Ghalibaf. Ghalibaf doesn't trust Irakchi, the foreign minister. So the first problem is the problem of commitment. The second problem is the problem of legitimacy. The Iranians have been enduring the cost of the war, mostly normal Iranians. But as we have seen, what they were hoping for was getting rid of this regime. That's why they went outside 18th and 19th of January, and tens of thousands of them have been killed. Now there's a sense of betrayal by the West that Iranians that I have been talking to are feeling, because they said tens of thousands of them have been killed. And they haven't been killed because they wanted a deal with the United States. They wanted freedom, and the freedom in that context only means getting rid of Islamic Republic. That's the second problem with the deal. And the third problem is long-term perspective. Now you mentioned the cost of the war to Iranians. The biggest cost is not from the war, it's from the Islamic Republic. For example, I think it's the only case in economic history of mankind which we had half a century of two-digit inflation. That wasn't because of the sanctions. Sanctions started from 20 years ago. That was the mismanagement, the Islamofascist system of the Islamic Republic that we had. So, for example, if you go back to Ahmadinejad's time, a couple of decades ago, Iran had highest oil revenue, and that didn't translate to prosperity of normal Iranians. That translated to more regional ambitions of Islamic Republic. So I think the third problem is the long-term perspective that we are going to have with this deal. Is it going to cause Iranians to be more prosperous and more free? I do not think so. I think any deal which doesn't change the political nature of the Islamic Republic is doomed to fail. And we are going to see, in my opinion, even if there's economic openness and Iran joins the global economy, the thing that we are going to see is not an example of Chile, which they didn't have political freedom at the time of Augusto Pinochet, but after the economic freedom, they gained political freedom in decades. What we are going to see is the China's example. And what's the China's example? An economic superpower with the political system of Soviet Union, maybe worse than that. So we are going to see Tiananmen squares in Iran. Even if we, in an optimistic scenario, we have openness, we have trade. So I think any deal which doesn't deal with the nature of the Islamic Republic, the totalitarian nature of the Islamic Republic, is doomed to fail.
Manki Bashazad, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your expertise on this morning.
Now still ahead, the Royal Marines intercept and detain a Russian shadow fleet tanker in British waters. Will Godley is on the scene.
Definitely am, yeah. We are on the sea, travelling to that vessel right now. It's anchored about 3 miles out to sea, just off the coast of Portland. This Russian shadow tanker vessel that was apprehended by the Royal Marines in the early hours of Sunday morning. The boat is currently still being investigated by the National Crime Agency. 1 crew member has been arrested. There are still 24 on board. We're headed there now. We're going to see how close we can get to it. It's a huge boat. It's the length of 2 football fields, it can carry 700,000 barrels of oil. To put that into money perspective, that's worth about £45 million. And government sources today saying this is only the beginning. Of course, the first time this operation has ever happened, but we could be seeing more of them in the coming few weeks and months. We're going to go to the scene now and see what's happening.
Well, Godly, very impressive to be able to speak that coherently in a speedboat going that fast.
And he wasn't drenched either.
No, absolutely. Well, coming up next, this weekend, the famous Red Arrows roared over Buckingham Palace in a dazzling flypast at Trooping the Colour. But they'll soon be reduced to just 7 of the 9 planes.
What a horrible, pernicious economy. They are magnificent. They are the best of British. We'll be going through that and more with Sarah Vine and Matthew Talbot. There they are.
Not at all horrible or pernicious,
They're
but
both
wonderful.
lovely.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the
unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. 23 minutes past 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Kate.
With our panel, we have former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot. And Sarah Vine is making a welcome return, I may say. I don't know where you've been.
I've been banned.
No, not at all. And I'm going to do this for her because she's rather shy. She now has the paperback version of her best-selling book, How Not to Be a Political Wife, a memoir. There is a woman flat out lying on
That's
her
me.
face.
Yeah.
Is that you after a night on the tiles?
That is me after a night on the tiles with you, Andrew.
Then we'd both be flat on our
We'd both be flat on our faces.
Very good. How Not to Be a Political Wife. It's brilliant, by the way.
But I should get my missus a copy if that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah, you should.
There's
a lot of tips.
Yes.
Tips.
I bet that in
A lot of tips on how not to do it. Very
All of my mistakes are in there, so, you know, you can learn.
Which is why it's quite a large book.
Andrew.
Shall we move on to the news? Andrew's weekly plug. We are talking about defence spending today, Matthew. Big row last week, of course, with John Healey, former Defence Secretary, and Al Khan's, the Armed Forces Minister, resigning over lack of funds. Do you think the new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis, is going to fare any better?
No, I think he's happy to take on the job because he's not going to ask for any more money. And I just struggle with the fact that as a former, quite honourable military man, Dan Jarvis can sort of go, no, this is fine with me. You know, we're protecting everybody as much as we can.
It's ambition. Wants to be in the cabinet.
He's in... Well, all right, yeah. I mean, you can say...
Wasn't in the cabinet before.
Well, then, actually, I spoke to people close to Dan years ago, and, you know, amongst people within the armed forces and those certainly higher up, Defence Secretary is a nothing job. They find it laughable. It's much more honourable and respected to be rising up through the armed forces, you know, because the Defence Secretary is normally just a politician. You know, you know very little. So I think the ambition, probably from Al Cairns, actually, who chose a bit later than his boss to go and has been angling for the defence job for quite some time. I don't think it'll matter. You know, we're going to have a new leader very shortly anyway. Dan Jarvis is unlikely to carry on. There'll be a new Defence Secretary. John Healey may return if the welfare bill can be cut and money can be found. So it'll be... And also, you know, this plan might not even be in place by the time we have a new leader, so there'll be work to do regardless, I would say.
And we've got Kemi later this morning, Sarah. She's making a speech saying, I'll work with Labour to cut warfare rather than welfare.
Yeah, I mean, I think warfare is an interesting word, isn't it? I think what we need is a defence system. I think people feel that you know, Britain is not capable of defending itself in you know, if should something happen.
Yeah.
We need an Iron Dome. We need something. I mean, a lot of our defence spending. I mean, I'm really not an expert, but it seems to me that a lot of it just goes on stuff that's outdated or sort of, you know, 1980s, 1990s, almost Cold War style equipment.
Yeah.
And actually, what we need is to upgrade our systems. You know, you look at the war in Ukraine, and you see that it's all drones, it's all electronic, it's completely different, it's totally new. And I think that you know, that's where the investment should be. People, you know, you want to give people the sense that were we were to be under attack, we could defend ourselves, and I don't think that's the case at the moment.
And John Healey, I'm told, was deeply shocked when the Iran war kicked off that there was no ship to send to protect the military base at Cyprus. And by the time a ship did get there, it was a month later.
It took ages to get there, wasn't it?
How embarrassing.
Yeah, it's just embarrassing. And it feeds into this thing about the red arrows, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, they're cutting two
Isn't that
off.
miserable?
It's like, why are you doing it?
Why do it?
It's, you know, it's a symbol of something...
It's something we do brilliantly.
Brilliant British expertise. I mean, I follow them on social media, and they always have these... They have all these... this footage of... They have footage from the pilots, so you can see how they're all lining up. It's really incredible, actually. Incredible control.
At Palace on Saturday, I did the show there for GBNews with Camilla Tominey. The roar from the crowd as the red arrows approached, it was spectacular. It looked spectacular. If you're on there we are. There they are. That great trail, red, white, and blue. Each member of the royal family craning their necks to see it. It was magnificent. And now the government are going to get rid of two of them. Are we that poor?
Listen, it's good. I like it. I also don't really care.
What?
Because I know.
Please go.
Because and maybe look, maybe I
Labour man.
Well, yeah. I think. No. There's time to recover. I've got a few moments. I think. Maybe I don't pay as much attention as others. I wouldn't notice two of them coming off. I'd just go, oh, that's good, isn't it? Still. And I'd be surprised if most people in the country would go, oh, there's not many as normal.
Let's be
clear, though.
3 lots of white, that's the point.
Well, that's fine, you can have 2 and 2 and whatever else, I'm sure. But the reason being, you called it pernicious, you called it, you know, whatever from the government. Very rare for me to stick up for the government sometimes during this last 2 years. But the only company that can provide the spare parts has gone into administration. They marketed themselves on being the only brand that could do so.
That is a reasonable explanation. But what is not a reasonable explanation is why the government can't make cuts in other departments to fund defence. So the shortfall, we think, for this defence investment plan is around 15 billion. It depends on how you calculate the figures. Just since Labour came to power, spending on the NHS up 13 billion a year. Spending on debt interest up 25 billion a year. Spending on PIP payments up 6.8 billion a year. Even if we just rewound welfare spending 2 years, we would have many times the amount of money we need to defend ourselves properly. And yet Labour seems incapable of making those very small cuts.
I won't disagree with you on that. I just don't think the two are linked. Reading this article, it's not to do with the defence investment plan.
No, because the different departments have been asked to make cuts. That's well reported.
Yeah.
Apart from DWP, they were not asked to make any cuts from their welfare. Yes, but this shows why they are linked. It's the one thing that the government is ring-fencing is welfare spending.
No, this says they've been flying since 1980.
Oh,
These
sorry,
planes
I'm
are
talking
50
about
years
the
old.
dip. I'm not
right, well, we'll agree on that, Miriam. I will see.
Maybe there's a technical explanation for that. I buy
They
what
are
you're
being
saying.
parked, apparently, according to the government. That's the point.
I'm talking about the shortfall in the defence investment plan and how that is linked to a failure to even address welfare spending.
Oh, listen, any politician behind closed doors will tell you that things like the triple lock is totally unsustainable, but we're going to persist down this road as long as, as long as there's votes in it. I think if you look at things like PIP, there is an over-reliance on giving people with mild mental health issues that benefit. You can row that back in. I think the Centre for Social Justice, I'll try and remember my figures, had a look, and if you could cut out about 60 or 70% of PIP claimants, because it's not, an in-work benefit, it's for those that need it because being disabled is normally a lot more expensive than not being disabled. When it's mild anxiety or mild depression, that is not an added expense. And because we've not had these face-to-face appointments since COVID, everything's gone over the telephone or online, there's been not even an overcorrection, there's just been a wheel out of giving people what they want. If you rein that back in, you could pay for about, I think it's... I'm going to forget, 100 million or 1 million talking therapy sessions, which is more likely to get people into
Sarah Vine, it would be a popular way forward to say we are going to cut back on welfare spending to give more money to defence.
Yes,
because we know our armies are small now, it's the Napoleonic Wars.
We now spend more on welfare than we get in tax returns. So that's obviously that's just unsustainable. That's never going to get you can't. That's just basic maths. But I think that the whole PIP thing and these kind of benefits, which I think are quite. If you have mild anxiety, if you know anything about mental health, I know quite a lot about it. The worst thing you can do is to sit at home and be paid to do nothing.
To get out.
Actually, you need to be out there, with assistance and help, and you need to be doing stuff. So I just don't understand why you're basically paying people to stay at home and rot, which is really not very good for them and not very good for the country. I don't understand. I may be naive here, but why can't the PIP payments or the welfare payments be in return for some sort of work that can happen within the community? Why isn't it local councils can't organise for people to volunteer or to do stuff so that they're out and about and that it feels like there's, there are savings, there are different ways of making savings. There's a shortage of carers, there is a shortage of, assistant teachers, all of these sorts of things. You could get people going and working. And it just seems that there's a sense that, anyone who's got a problem, you just want to sort of park them and pay them just to not bother you too much. I think that's a cultural thing, isn't it? That's a sort of laziness that's crept into the system, and I totally don't think that all people on PIP are lazy. A lot of people need it, and that's fine. But as you say, there needs to be proper assessment, and it needs to, we need to make sure that.
But who'd have thought defence becoming such a political issue?
Well, I think the thing about
it's interesting because I think
for years and years and years, I mean, and this is partly our generation. I mean, we've all just got so used to there not being any real sort of, conflict hasn't really affected us in Britain, and so it's always been at the bottom of priority lists. And anyone who's tried to push forward an agenda for more defence spending has just been told, oh, you're just a warmonger and all this kind of thing. And the truth is, it's important. Peace is something that you have to fight for, and sometimes you have to fight to maintain it. And you cannot allow yourself to be completely exposed in the way that we are. And you can't expect our armed forces to do the job that we want them to do if you don't give them the resources. They're fighting with one hand tied behind their back.
Yeah, they are.
To be continued. Sorry, Matthew.
I think there's appetite for it in the PLP now. I think there's a realisation that there may have to be a trade-off between welfare and defence spending.
Well, that was something we should absolutely pick up in the next hour.
Absolutely.
Matthew and Sarah, thank you so much.
We're going to get our 60-second news update first with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much. The top stories at 10:30. Sir Keir Starmer has announced under-16s will be banned from a range of social media in what he's called a big moment for our country. The UK follows Australia's example in raising the minimum age to 16 for sites including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and Snapchat. Elsewhere, British armed forces have intercepted and seized a Russian Shadow Fleet vessel in the English Channel in the first operation of its kind. Royal Marine Commandos and specially trained officers boarded the oil tanker supported by the RAF in the early hours of this morning. Donald Trump has announced a peace deal to end the war with Iran is complete. Pakistan's Prime Minister says following intensive talks, both sides have agreed to the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social authorising the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the removal of the United States naval blockade. And Roy Hattersley, who served as deputy leader of the Labour Party under Neil Kinnock, has died at the age of 93. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me at 11.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Well, coming up next, the Royal Marines intercept and detain a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker in British waters. We'll have the latest as our national reporter, Will Godley, is speeding to the scene.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there. Occasional showers in places, but actually we've got high pressure building across Europe, so many areas will be mostly settled. We'll see some bits of cloud around coastal areas at times. This should burn back quite nicely through the course of Tuesday. Occasional showers across parts of Spain, Sicily, but actually for most it's going to be dry, settled, plenty of sunshine. This is going to continue through the week, and also temperatures are on the rise as well, pushing into the mid-30s for some towards the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine and dry weather around today, feeling warm where we see any sunny spells, though we are expecting some spots of rain this morning. This mostly across Northern Ireland, northwest Wales, central and southeast England. We have a band of showers moving their way northeastwards, and we may hear the odd rumble of thunder associated with these. Otherwise, it should be mostly dry, though there's a fair amount of cloud starting to push into the west, this turning fairly low across southern coasts of Wales, southwest England, so a little bit disappointing here. But otherwise, in any bright or sunny spells, feeling warm, temperatures widely pushing into the mid-20s. Now, as we progress later on into the day, gradually turning more unsettled across the north, these showers will push their way northeastwards across Scotland, merging into longer spells of rain, turning that a little bit heavier across the hills. Plenty of cloud to finish off the day across Northern Ireland, some showers here, similar across many northern areas of England. Now, elsewhere across England and Wales, it should be mostly dry, just a few showers starting to clip in to the west by the end of the day, but quite a lot of cloud around into the evening, some quite low cloud leading to some murky conditions, and this will be thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And this rain across parts of the north will continue to be heavy, especially across the hills, perhaps a little bit blustery as it drifts its way northeastwards, but a much milder start to Tuesday compared to what we've had this morning. Temperatures across the south not dropping much past the mid-teens. Now, on Tuesday, once again, we've still got this rain across the far north of Scotland. It'll eventually clear its way northeastwards. Lots of clouds, still some spots of rain and drizzle following on behind. Turning a little bit brighter for some areas into the afternoon, but once again, a return of the rain across Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall later into the day, and this could turn heavy. The best of the brightness is going to be across the far east, highs reaching 26 Celsius.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A43 is restricted at Loughnell Street, Loch Gilphead for emergency roadworks. One lane is closed on the A449 northbound between Usk and Raglan. The M5 northbound in Worcestershire has one lane closed from junction 5 to junction 4A after a collision. The M53 southbound entry slip at junction 4 is closed due to a police incident, expected to reopen after 1 this afternoon. And on the trains, major disruption continues on the Elizabeth line between London Paddington and Heathrow Terminal 5 and Reading. Great Western Railway faces issues between London Paddington to Reading and Par. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
I have a heavy heart telling you this because there's a new bid to legalise assisted dying. It's been launched after that last proposed legislation was blocked in the House of Lords earlier this year.
Well, disability rights advocate George Fielding joins us now. George, thank you so much for coming into the studio. So we've learnt this morning that Lauren Edwards, backbench Labour MP, is going to bring back this bill that actually was dropped in Parliament last year.
Indeed. I feel like, Miriam, we're in some dystopian deja vu. We're right back to where we were 2.5 years ago, to this bill that has been roundly defeated, and that is an incredibly unsafe piece of legislation. What we have now is assisted suicide that would enable for terminally ill prisoners to have their life foreshortened, which is AKA capital punishment. And what you also have is no exemption for people with learning disabilities. They have no right to inform family. We are right back to whether or not it is right for the NHS to give poison, which is not medication. Medication was never designed to be lethal. It was never designed to end life, to people at their most vulnerable in their lives. And many people will say, George, what are you doing? It doesn't affect disabled people. Well, legally, as part of the Equalities Act, every terminally ill person is in fact disabled. That's why we have shortcuts for people with cancer to get benefits and all sorts of things. What this is a dystopian utilitarianism where what people fear so much is the most natural thing that's going to happen to all of us. I was in Godalming yesterday with my family. We live in a time, Miriam, where palliative care is the object of charity, where every hospice I know of is currently laying off people who could give people the most wonderful support at the end of their lives to elongate their lives, not in pain. What are we worried about? Why is this a priority?
And when you say what most people are worrying about, to articulate, what are you, if this became law, what are you most worried about?
I don't believe that we have the invention, the imagination, or the love of humanity and of life that is needed to bring about solutions for people that are really struggling. 1 in 4 people that live in poverty are disabled. We cannot get good social care. There are waiting lists on the NHS as long as your arm. There are so many ways in which we could agree to support people. But the only solution that the government is putting forward at the moment is death. And that's one thing I would like, if I may, to say to Lauren Edwards. I'm sure she's a wonderful MP, but nobody's ever heard of her beyond this morning, so I hope she enjoys this media round. But one thing I would like to say is this. What is progressive? What is left-wing about trying to end life? The Centre for Women's Justice said the safeguards for women were inadequate. Voluntary eating and stopping of eating and drinking will qualify under the terms of this bill. When did anorexia become a terminal illness? When did it become a terminal illness? My dear friend Chelsea Roth has done research. 60 women across the world have ended their lives through euthanasia. And what is progressive about, in Belgium, being able to kill kill yourself with parental consent at 16. Well, you know, where is the love for life? I have to say, it's on my side. I want support to live, as does every disabled person. And I don't, and I can't see it. Why is this a priority?
And every disability organisation, I think, George, has condemned, criticised...
There's not one in favour.
Right.
There's not one in favour. I have to say, at the root of everybody's case for advocating for this is trauma. And I apologise. We've all seen people die in circumstances that we wouldn't wish, in pain, and I'm sorry.
And what would you say to those people who would say, actually, the families of people like that who say, I want this legislation so I can let that loved person release them from a terrible death?
I would shake their hand and say, a blank cheque for palliative care. Absolutely. A gold standard in palliative care. And that's what I want. I was the youngest person to set up a social care company in this country. I led that company through COVID. And let me tell you, social care is neither social nor caring. We're not investing in it. And that's a problem.
George, lots of people have criticised the bill that is now coming back word for word in this private members' bill. The House of Lords famously laid, I think, 1,227 amendments to it. That was how dangerous they thought it was. If this bill was better drafted, if there were more safeguards, would you support it?
Well, not to give you a politician's answer, but they'll have to accept the safeguards. I was there every Friday, and seeing the Lords scrutinise this bill, as they failed to do in the Commons, was an absolute delight. It was democracy at its best, and I thank all of those people. Absolutely. But every one of those amendments got roundly rejected, because a safeguard to proponents of this bill is a blocker to the very thing that they want. This very policy is designed with the end in mind, and the end that they have is to kill people. Now, on the NHS, so that's the solution that they want. They want not to give life, but to end it, and so every safeguard is a blocker. And that is a problem. And I was there as Charlie Faulkner said that poverty should not be a barrier, that feeling a burden should not be a barrier, that being under coercive control and internalising that coercion and feeling like a burden to your health providers, to your hospital, shouldn't be a blocker to this. And that is what is so scary. It undervalues every healthcare service we've got.
Just so people know, Charlie Faulkner, of course, is a former Labour Lord Chancellor who was a key mover behind the assisted dying bill.
Yeah, indeed.
Going to have to move on now, but thank you so much, George Fielding, for coming in, disability rights advocate George Fielding.
And making your case so passionately,
Absolutely.
George.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. We should say that Charlie Faulkner did himself lay 77 amendments to this bill. That's how inadequate he thought it was.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, coming up next, the Royal Marines intercept and detain a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker in British waters.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
All the things that we might not think about when we think about a pint of beer, all the things that go into running a pub like this one. So I'll hand you the microphone, you tell us while I have a go at this. Don't judge me too harshly, Dawn.
Amazing. So obviously people don't take into effect that the energy costs and the raw material costs, also the packaging, overheads and the tax hikes. So when we're pulling a pint of beer, we have to think about the cost that's gone into making the beer and the rises in that. We also have to think about the overheads, the staff, the electrics which are plumbed in to pouring a pint. This obviously is very astronomical to pubs, because if it increases, we're therefore going to have to put that onto the consumer, making the pint of beer more expensive.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast every day from 6 a.m.
You can't help wondering if that's what Prince William, future king, of course, is sort of planning for the future, whether that's the sort of slightly more laid-back attitude towards modern life.
Yes, I mean, I think we're going to see a huge change in the type of monarchy we have when he comes to the throne. We can very much see that King Charles is his mother's son. King Charles very much regards the Coronation Act as a sacrament, that it's essentially akin to becoming a priest, something that you do for life, much as the Queen Elizabeth felt it was too, a deeply sacred spiritual bond, a covenant between God and himself and the people. We know that that is not really the way that Prince William regards monarchy as well. I personally think, for example, that Prince William will become the first king to abdicate.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I thought the film, which Spielberg did, didn't somehow strike the right note.
So this would be the way I felt about High Society, the musical. It's glossy, it's beautiful, it's impressive, but you feel a little bit distant from it. War Horse, you are in there. Fantastic humour, that brings you in, you laugh with them, you care about them. So even when they're in the trenches and Albert makes a friend, they're bantering about girlfriends and things like that. You absorb how arbitrary and terrible war is, you know, decisions made by people far away, young lads just shoved over to run horse charges
and it's happening now, Stefan, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
What you're describing is happening now.
Well, this is why it's resonating so much, because you're sitting there going, what is the point? It's so beautifully done. I cannot recommend it enough.
Where?
This one is on at the National Theatre. It's Come Back Home, where it started almost 20 years ago.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It is 9 minutes to 11. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, it was daring-do stuff, wasn't it? British Armed Forces intercepting and seizing a Russian shadow fleet vessel in the English Channel, the first successful operation of its kind.
Well, as impressive as it is, isn't it just convenient that they did this on the eve of the G7 summit and after such a difficult week in defence politics?
Well, we're going to talk to GB News National to Will Godley, who joins us now from Portland, where the tanker is sort of under lock and key.
Has it dropped out for you? Can you hear?
Will, good morning. Oh, he's gone. He's having far too much fun on that speedboat. Do you think we could get away with presenting Britain's Newsroom from a speedboat one day?
Very nice idea.
There's some little boats outside on the water in Paddington, but I looked up. They only go 3.5 miles an hour.
That's not very fast.
Particularly exhilarating.
No, yeah, but we don't go too fast. Now, we'll be talking later on. Kimmy Badenoch's making a major speech. She is going to be talking about how she's very generously saying to the Labour leadership, I'll help you get cuts in welfare through the Commons. She'll lend her 120 odd Tory MPs, knowing that there's absolutely no chance Labour will take up the offer. She's politicking, but that's her job. But she's making the point. We've seen a Defence Secretary resign in the last week. Extraordinary moment. Nobody saw that coming, John Healey. No. Because he was outraged at the paltry little extra defence spending being announced. We've got a new Defence Secretary. He'll be talking to the Commons later today, Dan Jarvis, who has had a distinguished military career. And, of course, it took 8 hours to appoint him.
Yeah. He was my constituency neighbour when I was an MP, as was John Healey, actually. Yeah. South Yorkshire MPs. I thought both of them were extremely impressive as individuals, very straightforward, very honest. Of course, wish him best in the job. But it's really interesting what Sarah Vine was saying a few minutes ago about how defence has become back in the news. And certainly in the 90s and early noughties, when the Cold War was over, we had this peace dividend, people thought we'd never fight a conventional war again. Nobody wanted to spend money on defence. Everybody wanted to spend money on welfare and health and pensions. But the world has changed, and it's interesting now that a majority of people are saying that they would back cuts to welfare in order to fund defence. That hasn't been the case for a long time.
I think also people must have shared the embarrassment of the Defence Secretary, John Healey, when it took us a month or so, or even longer, to get a ship, a naval frigate, to Cyprus to defend where we have a military base.
Well, the refit in port and the renovations were actually pretty quick. All credit to the crew who did it. But the fact that there were none available to be deployed was...
And what was really embarrassing for me, the Greek Navy got there before us. Not disparaging Greece, but they are not noted for being a major maritime power. we used to rule the waves.
And this morning, the head of the German Luftwaffe has been quoted in the Telegraph saying that the Luftwaffe would be happy to defend London should we need it. Well, that's a historical irony.
There's an irony, my word.
Extraordinary. Well, looking forward to hearing what Kevin Badenoch has to say about welfare next. Of course, lots of people saying, well, why didn't the Tories do this when they were in power? They had 14 years to revive our armed forces. Yeah. In fact, things collapsed.
And I hope she says, I've watched GB News, do not cut the red arrows from 9 to 7. It's appalling.
We would definitely support that. Well, let us know what you think at gbnews.com/you'll say. Plenty more coming up on Britain's favourite morning news show on GB News. But first of all, we've got your weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of fine and dry weather around today. Feeling warm where we see any sunny spells, though we are expecting some spots of rain this morning. This mostly across Northern Ireland, northwest Wales, central and southeast England. We have a band of showers moving their way northeastwards, and we may hear the odd rumble of thunder associated with these. Otherwise, it should be mostly dry, though there's a fair amount of clouds starting to push into the west. This turning fairly low across southern coasts of Wales, southwest England, so a little bit disappointing here. But otherwise, in any bright or sunny spells, feeling warm, temperatures widely pushing into the mid-20s. Now, as we progress later on into the day, gradually turning more unsettled across the north, these showers will push their way northeastwards across Scotland, merging into longer spells of rain, turning that a little bit heavier across the hills. Plenty of clouds finish off the day across Northern Ireland, some showers here, similar across many northern areas of England. Now, elsewhere across England and Wales, it should be mostly dry, just a few showers starting to clip in to the west by the end of the day, but quite a lot of cloud around into the evening, some quite low cloud leading to some murky conditions, and this will be thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And this rain across parts of the north will continue to be heavy, especially across the hills, perhaps a little bit blustery as it drifts its way northeastwards, but a much milder start to Tuesday compared to what we've had this morning. Temperatures across the south not dropping much past the mid-teens. Now, on Tuesday, once again, we've still got this rain across the far north of Scotland. It'll eventually clear its way northeastwards. Lots of clouds, still some spots of rain and drizzle following on behind. Turning a little bit brighter for some areas into the afternoon, but once again, a return of the rain across Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall later into the day, and this could turn heavy. The best of the brightness is going to be across the far east, highs reaching 26 Celsius.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams. With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won. Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel. As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the late edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, late edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time. But I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
It's 11 o'clock on Monday, the 15th of June, live across the United Kingdom, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, some breaking news this morning. The social media crackdown for under-16s is official.
I can announce that the government will ban access to social media for all children under the age of 16.
Well, the ban will come into force early next year and there will be curfews in force for older teenagers between 16 up to 18.
Elsewhere, a peace deal has been agreed. The US President Donald Trump declares let the oil flow as a peace pact between the US and Iran has finally been reached.
And they're still at war over military spending. The Prime Minister's told the new Defence Secretary there is no more cash.
So can the Prime Minister tell us why on his watch, for the first time ever, we are now spending more on welfare than we earn in income tax?
Yes. Well, should we put warfare over welfare? This morning, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, will tell Sir Keir Starmer to cut the welfare budget in order to fund defence. Don't miss it.
And very dramatic stuff. Royal Marines have intercepted a shadow fleet tanker in British waters. It's being detained off the south coast. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Quinn said it was a huge success.
The dialogue that we had with them was professional, safe, and indeed the crew enabled us to conduct the actions that we needed to complete to safely take control of that vessel.
Well, today, Scotland is enjoying a World Cup bank holiday after beating Haiti in their opening game of the tournament.
It's also National Beer Day today, Miriam, so presumably if they'd lost that match, they'd be drowning their sorrows. But what on earth has possessed the Scottish Government to give them a bank holiday just for qualifying?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And bank holidays sound like a great idea, but for employers who are having to pay overtime or losing income because they're closing their shop or their business, it's not straightforward.
Yeah.
Also, does this mean children have got a day off school in the middle of exam season?
Crazy,
Surely
isn't it?
not.
And what happens if in the unlikely event Scotland win the blimmin' tournament? What do they get, the month off? The week off?
Take
a year off.
Independence for the football team. If you're in Scotland, please let us know what you think about this bank holiday. Good idea, bad idea. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Yeah, but first we're going to get the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you. The top story. Sir Keir Starmer has announced under-16s will be banned from a range of social media in what he's called a big moment for our country. Children's charity, the NSPCC, described the ban as a win for children and parents and all of us who've campaigned for better child protection online. The UK follows Australia's example in raising the minimum age to 16 for sites including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and Snapchat.
Fundamentally believe that we must harness the power of technology to build a stronger, fairer Britain. But we must also protect our children. And so I want this message to be heard loud and clear. I am not prepared to compromise on the safety and happiness of our children. And that is why this ban must happen, and that is why this ban will happen.
Shadow Education Secretary Laura Trott spoke to GB News Breakfast this morning about the ban.
This is something that we actually do have at the moment. So the Online Safety Act brought in age gating where it comes to pornography sites, and that's actually been very effective so far at reducing the number of children who are accessing porn sites. So this would be something that would come in more broadly for social media. It is working in Australia, it's had some bumps, but it is already making a bit of a change in terms of how safe children feel online there. And as I said, this is a long-term project to show that social media is not safe for children.
Let's go live now to the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, who is talking about funding our defence.
For failing to protect our national security and for not providing the funding that our military needs to keep us all safe. And thirdly, today a crisis of political leadership with Keir Starmer in office but not in power, leading a paralysed government awaiting the result of a by-election and the inevitable leadership challenge. Any one of these three issues would be cause for concern. Taken together, they are a major threat to our national security. We are facing this lethal combination of threats without a plan for our military. The Defence Investment Plan is late. Britain's military has been in limbo for 2 years. The Defence Investment Plan was promised in the autumn of last year. Then it was promised in the spring. It was promised last week. It was promised this week. It's still not here. Back in April, at the London Defence Conference, I explained why Britain needed to rearm, and I said that the failure to publish this plan was a national scandal. The Conservatives have been pressing the government again and again for action, with parliamentary questions, multiple votes, letters to ministers, all led by my Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge and his deputy Mark Francois. This plan is supposed to be the blueprint for how the government is going to buy the equipment, weapons and munitions we need. Without it, we cannot rearm Britain. Without it, our military cannot plan effectively. Without it, we are not safe. On Wednesday, at Prime Minister's questions, I asked 6 times about the Defence Investment Plan. The Prime Minister tried to brush it off, saying everything was fine. The next day, his Defence Secretary resigned. Things are not fine. They're not fine. No British Defence Secretary has ever resigned in this way. No Defence Secretary has ever had to write a letter telling the Prime Minister that he has been unable and the Treasury has been unwilling to commit the resources that the nation needs to defend the country at this time of rising threats. No Defence Secretary has ever accused the Prime Minister of leaving Britain naked in the face of a threat of a Russian invasion of NATO territory. John Healey acted honourably. He did. He knows that an attack on any NATO country would mean a war between Russia and the West, a war that our own intelligence assessment says could come in just 4 years. Under Article 5, we would rightly be obliged to enter the conflict to defend the member state that was under attack. If Russia invades NATO, we would be at war with Russia. We have troops on the front line already, in Estonia as part of NATO's forward land forces. And yet the former Defence Secretary warned last week that Keir Starmer's plans will reduce the readiness of our forces and increase the risk to personnel on operations. This is exactly what Conservatives have been saying repeatedly for over a year. And John Healey is not the only one. The Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, also gave his own stark warnings. He criticised the government's Northern Ireland Legacy Bill, warning that that bill remains unfit for purpose and it risks failing the very veterans that it claims to protect. He warned that the Defence Investment Plan was both inadequately funded and not transformative enough. And yet, rather than heeding these warnings and changing course, the Prime Minister seems to be burying his head in the sand. This morning, we learned that the Prime Minister is refusing to offer any additional money to fund the Defence Investment Plan. So he is proposing to proceed with the exact funding package that half of his defence team has just resigned over. We read on Saturday that the Chancellor is so angry about the prospect of having to cut other departmental budgets to fund defence that she has refused to take part in the process of drawing up the cuts. This is pathetic. And in the middle of all this, the Energy Secretary is apparently so angered by having to make cuts that he is on resignation watch. He is refusing to meet the Prime Minister, we hear. The Cabinet is not up to the job. I have been calling for the Defence Investment Plan to be published for months, but we now know that the plan as it is currently drafted is not worth the paper it is written on. Rushing to publish it without addressing the concerns raised by John Healey and Al Khans would be irresponsible. There are 3 tests which must be met if the plan is to protect our national security. The first test is the funding test. Our party's position is that we should get to 3% by 2030, but as a minimum, the funding must deliver the additional £28 billion over 4 years that the Chief of Defence Staff has asked for. Today, the Telegraph reports that the new Defence Secretary will only be offered the same £13.5 billion which John Healey resigned over. That leaves a gap of nearly £15 billion. The second test is the readiness test. This means the funding for the plan must not be backloaded into the next Parliament. As Al Khans warned, the pressure of operations and imperative to speed up readiness to fight comes in the next 2 years. There is no point providing the money after an attack on NATO might have occurred. The third test is the capability test. The plan must be transformative. It must enable us to address the threats of the next war, not the last. The Defence Investment Plan should equip Britain with a more lethal and operationally effective armed forces with a mixture of traditional equipment and modern tech, such as drones and counter-drones. James Cartledge and I have toured the country, meeting the brilliant British defence companies that are providing cutting-edge technology to Ukraine. They're providing technology to Ukraine, but these same companies cannot get a contract with our own armed forces. That makes no sense. If the Prime Minister is unable to provide the leadership within his cabinet to deliver a defence investment plan that meets these 3 tests, then he should resign now and make way for a leader who can. What is the solution? It is the same solution I have put to Keir Starmer week after week since February last year, including last Wednesday. It's the solution that even Tony Blair, the authors of the government's own strategic defence review, Lord Robertson, former chief of defence, former Labour Defence Secretary, former NATO Secretary General, a former chief of defence staff, Lord Stirrup, they're all saying the same thing. The solution is to cut the bloated welfare state to fund defence. The problem facing the government is that despite Labour's huge parliamentary majority, there is no majority in the Labour Party for serious welfare reductions. The Prime Minister failed to get even modest changes past his backbenchers, very modest changes that would have still left the benefits bill increasing. He couldn't get that past his backbenchers. So my party is going to work with any Labour leader in the national interest to cut the benefits bill to pay for defence. I have made an offer of working together repeatedly for well over a year, since February 2025, because I could see what needed to be done. Some things are too important for party politics.
But if the Prime Minister won't accept my offer, I will make the same offer today to Andy Burnham. I was glad to read this weekend that Andy Burnham was thinking along the right lines. He talked about reducing welfare to pay for defence. But his idea that we can reduce the benefits bill purely by reducing the underlying long-term causes of demand is fanciful. We cannot make immediate savings on welfare by spending more money on skills or employment support. Yes, we all want to get more people off welfare and into work, but we have to bring down the benefits bill fast because Britain needs the money to pay for defence now. There is no time to waste. We know from the Welfare Secretary's text messages that the problem is not just the Labour leadership, it is Labour MPs. Pat McFadden revealed that those Labour MPs are always asking for more taxes so that they can hand out more benefits. So changing leader won't solve the problem of those backbenchers. That is why I am offering 115 Conservative votes in Parliament for welfare reforms. 116 if you count my own as well. But I make the offer of working with Labour because no other party is taking defence seriously right now. No other party. What are the Liberal Democrats doing? Their proposal is more borrowing when we are already borrowing dangerous amounts. We cannot afford more debt. We are already spending more on the interest of debt than we are spending on defence. The Liberal Democrats are not serious. Reform UK. Blame NATO for the invasion of Ukraine. They are Putin apologists who don't even have a defence spokesman. They are not serious. And the SNP want to abandon our nuclear deterrent and ban new North Sea drilling. That would leave us with less energy security. They are not serious. Only the Conservative Party is taking this seriously. We need to get to spending 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. My party has shown that we will take the difficult decisions that we need in order to get there. So we have promised to restore the two-child benefit cap in full and use that money to fund a bigger army, 6,000 more regular troops, 14,000 more reserves. That money would fund the largest uplift in British troop numbers under any Prime Minister since 1945. In contrast, on the 3rd of February this year, Reform UK promised to spend that money on reducing beer duty. We have promised to reallocate money from Ed Miliband's net zero projects to create a sovereign defence fund of up to £50 billion. We want to spend the £400 million that Keir Starmer was going to spend this year on his failed Chagos deal on Royal Navy shipbuilding. But even more tough decisions than that are going to be required. And the answer is clear to anyone who is looking seriously at this. We must cut welfare to fund our defence. We must. Lord Robertson, who authored Keir Starmer's his government's strategic defence review, said 2 months ago that we cannot defend Britain with an ever-expanding welfare budget. Even Labour know this. They know this. So my party will press ahead with preparing our plans to reform welfare and to reduce the benefits bill. Helen Whately, my Shadow Welfare Secretary, is going to be saying more on that tomorrow. But there is no time to be lost. We cannot wait until the general election and the next Conservative government. That is why I am offering to work together now in the national interest. This is about our national security. Today's world is more dangerous and more threatening than we have known in our lifetimes. Make no mistake, authoritarian states are working day in, day out to destabilize and divide Britain and our allies. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought war back to Europe and left Ukraine fighting not just for her own survival, but for the principles of freedom and self-determination on which we all rely. In the Middle East, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed to international shipping for months. And while a peace agreement is of course welcome, we are faced with a United States that is playing by different rules than the ones we are used to. The first duty of government is to keep the country safe. Everything else follows from that. The best way to prevent war is to be so prepared for it that you deter your enemies from ever attacking you. Last year, Keir Starmer promised that defence would be the central organising principle of his government. As his time in office draws to a close, it is clear that it has not been. He has one last chance to be a man of his word. But if he cannot live up to this promise, the next Prime Minister must. Britain needs leadership. Britain needs seriousness. Conservatives are ready to do whatever it takes to keep our country safe in the national interest. Britain needs a government now that understands the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I'm now going to questions from the media. Can we start with Carl Davies from ITV, please?
Hello, Carrie Davis.
Oh, Carrie Davis. Sorry, Carrie. Pardon me.
Do you accept that your proposed cuts to welfare will trap some low-income families and hundreds of thousands of children in poverty? Is it the Conservatives' position that it's those people who should bear the brunt?
The best way to reduce poverty is to get people into work and off benefits. That is the best way. And this is about our national security. Those people who are on welfare are not going to be secure unless we fund our defence. We should not make this argument a false one. We have to look after our country's security above all else. If we don't have that, we do not have a country. Lucy McDade from Sky News, please.
Hello, Lucy McDade from Sky News. By 2030, we are forecast to be spending over £15 billion on the triple lock. You talk about the need to cut welfare. Is your position that you won't touch the triple lock?
So, Lucy, you know very well that every single time I'm asked this question, I say that the triple lock is not where the issue is. Our welfare bill, we have a welfare plan till 2031. We do not have a defence investment plan for next year. If we get people off welfare and into work, it is a double whammy. We're not paying their benefits and they are paying more tax and helping to grow the economy. We came into 2010 with a lot of pensioner poverty. That is why the triple lock was put in place. Rather than moving money around and robbing Peter to pay Paul, what we need to do is to get people into work and start funding our defence. Catherine Foster from GB News.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. You talk about cutting welfare, but that's not going to be sufficient, is it, to pay all the money you need to get to 3% by the end of this Parliament? Where else would the money come from? And do you rule out things like, for example, the Defence Security and Resilience Bank that people like Mark Carney are talking about joining now? Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I don't know about the specifics of what Mark Carney has said, but we have outlined other ways that we can save, that we can find savings. The Sovereign Defence Fund is one of those examples, and we can take the money out of Ed Miliband's vanity projects on net zero and move it straight into defence. It's one of the things that could also crowdsource private sector funding. We've laid out plans for exactly how we would do that. I've also talked about the money that Keir Starmer was happy to give away on the Chagos deal. Let's not forget that Keir Starmer was prepared to pay £35 billion to give away British sovereign territory at a time when his own defence secretary was saying you're not keeping this country safe. I don't think that we should underestimate just how tough it must have been for John Healey to come out and say say what he did. Those were not light comments. He is saying that Keir Starmer is not protecting us. So we have got to find the money. That is why I'm making the offer to work with them. It's not going to be easy. We know that. This should not be a left-wing or right-wing issue. This should be a cross-party issue. But the fact that Keir Starmer is so dismissive of the idea of working with anybody and is just going to keep the defence funding as low as it is, to the point where his own ministers are resigning, I think is absolutely shocking. It's shocking. Harry Farley, BBC.
Thank you, Harry Farley, BBC News. You stood on a manifesto that promised to reintroduce national service. Is that still your policy to respond to some of the threats that you've outlined? And if I may, it's about 24 hours since you published that letter offering to work with Andy Burnham. Has he responded?
Have we heard from Andy Burnham? I'm going to take that as a no. I think he's probably still reading the letter and working out what he's going to say. You talk about the last manifesto. That wasn't my manifesto. In case you haven't noticed, Harry, the Conservative Party is under new leadership. Under new leadership.
So good there.
Well, that's Kemi Badenoch speaking about defence and offering to work with Labour to cut welfare in order to fund defence.
Fat chance they'll take that offer up.
Indeed. It would be a surprise if they did. Well, we're going to get the thoughts of Matthew Talbot and Sarah Vines shortly on that speech. But first of all...
We're going to get to listen to Reform Treasury spokesman Robert Jenrick, who's setting out plans for what he says is a major tax reform.
So Nigel Farage and I are very confident that this can and will be done. We're setting out our intentions today, so businesses have due notice of what is going to happen in a reform government. The era of businesses getting rich by undercutting British workers' wages is going to end. The combination of migration, welfare and tax reforms will be the biggest change to our economy this century. But it's a change that, frankly, is long overdue. Change in the interests of our people, of our economy, of our society. Lower taxes for British businesses who are doing the right thing and employing British workers. Lower taxes for British workers. More Brits in work. Fewer Brits on welfare. That is the Britain that Reform intends to build. Thank you very much. Well, now I'm going to take some questions from the press, and the first one I've got is from Joe Pike of the BBC. Good morning, Joe.
Morning, Mr. Jenrick. Thank you for the speech. Joe Pike, BBC News. Why the taper with this policy? Surely you want to help British workers get the best high-paid jobs, not merely focus the policy on those less paid. And also, what's your message to critics who question why you're announcing a policy but saying you won't give the full details until close to the election?
Well, firstly, we've given a lot of detail today, and we're publishing a document alongside this. We are very confident that on the basis of the detailed modelling that we've done, that the levy that we will be introducing more than pays for reversing Rachel Reeves's disastrous jobs tax for British workers. I don't think it would be responsible for us to give the final graduated levy today. That is normal. That is the way that other oppositions have behaved in the past. If you think back to when Labour in opposition in the 1990s announced the national living wage, a similarly big change to the way in which the economy would operate. They didn't announce the precise level at which the minimum wage was going to be set before the general election. They did so knowing the state of the economy at the time that they did it. But I've given you today an indication of where it would be set. Were we setting it right now? I've said that if you were a worker on the living wage, at the bottom end of the income spectrum, then it would be around £3,750. So to answer your other question, the reason that we're doing this is because we want to make it very difficult for employers to continue to rely on this easy lever of cheap foreign labour. If you run a care home or a distribution centre, if you're one of the thousands of people in my constituency who work in jobs like that, then those employers, frankly, should be going out into the labour market and employing Brits. And if that means paying those people a little bit more, then they should do that, because they have relied for far too long on an easy lever of foreign labour, and that is going to come to an end once and for all. We don't want this to penalise the most skilled people, the very highly skilled people who come into this country, top scientists and investors. We want Britain to continue to attract, on a meritocratic basis, the very best people. But look, beyond no doubt, in a reform government, the Treasury is going to behave differently to the way it has in the past. Previous chancellors have just juiced up the GDP numbers by relying on foreign labour to come into the country. And that has made the lives of British people worse. Their wages have been undercut, and it has meant that millions, particularly at the lower end of the spectrum, have been languishing on welfare. That comes to an end, and this policy does that. Thank you very much. I've got Keith Bays now from GB News. Oh, sorry. I've got Jasmine, from ITV News. Jasmine.
Hi, Jasmine Cameron-Chaleshi, ITV News. Migrant workers are heavily relied upon across the social care, hospitality and manufacturing sectors. Have you consulted with these sectors, met with businesses to better understand the impact of some of these changes? And secondly, over the weekend, the party said that it would ban foreign nationals from living in social housing. What's your response to housing charities like Shelter, who say the policy is morally wrong and it won't actually address the decades-long failure to build enough?
We're with Sarah Vine, Daily Mail columnist, and former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett in the studio. Sarah Vine, let's talk first of all about Kemi Badenoch. Quite clear, all about cutting welfare to create more money for defence. It's a long time since I've heard a Tory leader make a speech like that.
Yeah, I thought she was very clear, very calm, very precise. She is like that. You always get the message with Kemi. It's never any sort of fudging, is there? It's just very clear what she's saying. And she breaks things down, I think, in a way that makes it very easy to understand. I mean, her basic point is that this country is not safe. We don't have what's required to defend ourselves.
John Healey effectively said that in his
John
resignation.
Healey said that. I think what's really interesting is she's calling for a cross-party effort, which I think a lot of people will think is a good idea. I think it's quite clever politics because this is an issue that sort of is bigger than any one party, really, isn't it? It's a countrywide issue. Her point about the Chagos Islands, 35 billion, well, that would easily pay for our defence.
Certainly would.
I just thought she's very on her game.
Matthew?
On top of her game.
It's a very strong speech, and I think clever politics because Labour have got two choices here. They can publish the defence investment plan as it is, or as it's rumoured to be, and it will be poo-pooed by many experts, including, the party's own people like Lord George Robertson, former Secretary-General of NATO, going, this isn't good enough, we need to do something.
He warned some weeks ago.
Of course he did. There was a problem. Or they can revert, go and find some money. Kemi can claim the victory. We have forced Labour to do this. They won't, but if you were to meet with Kemi, she can also lay claim to being the mature politician in the room. It reminds me of Brexit, we will all meet together to... And nothing, actually, it's a trap, they won't do it. I will push back on my mate, Andy Burnham, because he's got an election to win this week. He's not, the idea that he's going to be doing defence investment right now, it would be silly and to take people for granted. But, as I said earlier, there appears to be, and I think John Healey's resignation has caused it, there is more of a flavour of maybe we should do something on this from the PLP now compared to last year when there was a sort of round rejection and Labour ended up U-turning massively on some of the welfare cuts that were planned. So I think...
Well, why do you think the mood music's changed on the Labour benches? Is it the embarrassment over we couldn't get a ship to Cyprus for a month, or is it more deep-seated?
I don't think stuff like that cuts through to some people's constituency doorsteps, but I do think there is an aspect of John Healey's a respected person within the PLP, always been very loyal with any Labour leader, opposition or otherwise, has done this clearly, not for leadership reasons like some other people. He's, although there's rumours he wanted that, I don't think it's true. I think it's because he's a serious man across his brief and gone, we can't do this. And I think there's a frustration people are hearing on the doorsteps of things not happening, and there's definitely a sense of unfairness in the country of I'm playing by the rules and I'm worse off than ever compared to people that are either coming across on the boats or people that sat at home on welfare or whatever else. And I also think if there is to be a new leader, which is likely, you're starting from a higher benchmark and given a little bit more leeway to go, maybe we should do certain things that the previous leader tried and was unsuccessful.
We heard, Sarah, we heard just a bit of Robert Jenrick at the end, but it appears he's saying his party would cut national insurance contributions for British employees. Now, we know that the government put up national insurance for employers.
Yeah.
Which effectively
so he's saying, I think effectively what he's trying to say is incentivise people to employ British nationals.
British jobs for British workers.
British jobs for British
Gordon
workers.
Brown said that once.
Which could be, I mean, quite administratively quite difficult.
Yes.
And also, I thought the question from the ITV person, which is that a lot of the people who work in the care sector are not British nationals. What are you going to do there? How are you going to make sure that that area is covered?
Yeah.
I think it sounds a little bit pie in the sky to me. I can see that it would appeal, but you know, a lot of the reason why we have so many foreign workers is because a lot of British people don't want to do those jobs. So you've got to try and overcome that problem.
Yeah, I suppose the problem that maybe they're trying to solve is it's all very well saying from now on you need a particularly high salary to come over here on a work visa, and actually the Labour government, having implemented what the last Conservative government did, have actually made a big difference in terms of the number of visas being given out. But you've also got this issue of many, probably millions of people who are here on legitimate visas when the requirements were much, much lower and probably going to get, or some of them, indefinite leave to remain. So you've got this problem where you've got a lot of people here with foreign passports, willing to work for less. How do you try to make sure British people get those jobs? And should you try to make sure British people get those jobs?
You could be creating another welfare problem with all of the people who will get indefinite leave to remain who now can't find work because it's too expensive for employers to employ them. I mean, I think the government made a big mistake when it made it hard for employers to employ people, because that is job security, that is all kinds of things that people desire and now are not getting because employers are just reluctant because they have to run businesses and they can't do that if their hands are tied so tightly. So I think anything that sort of pushes back on that is good, but I'm not quite sure this would be my choice to...
And back on national insurance, Wes Streeting, of course, since he's left the Cabinet, they're all leaving the Cabinet these days, aren't they? He's actually said the rise in national insurance on employers was a mistake. Didn't say it at the time, didn't threaten to resign over it. No. Is he genuine or is it just political opportunism?
Probably a bit of both. I respect the aspect of collective responsibility. And, you know, the problem is anything from the Cabinet's leaked minutes after it's been sat, and you've got to play a part. It's a team role. You've got to see how things play out. I can see why Rachel Reeves was tempted, because it brought in £4 or £5 billion that she needed quite quickly. However, it becomes almost purposely inflationary as a policy. And I think it wasn't fair on... I always felt it wasn't fair on businesses because you're having this double whammy. You either, for me, lift the minimum wage or do the NICS rise. You don't do both and clobber them. And I think you'll have seen other leadership candidates up north say that actually the NICS rise might be something they would pull back in as Prime Minister and lower back to its rate, and I think give hospitality a chance with a cut to VAT.
Remember, they did say as well in their manifesto, we will not increase taxes for working people. Yeah. What, employers aren't working people?
No, exactly. I mean,
plumbers who have 4 people on their books, that plumber's not a worker.
And I think, and also the sort of... the kind of reforms in the maternity pay and how long you have to have someone, periods of before you can fire somebody, all those sort of which have got much more stringent, is also very difficult because if you have to give someone benefits from the moment they join and then they turn out not to be the right person, then you can't get rid of them, then you have got a real headache. If you're a small business, if you only employ 2 or 3 people, it's not a problem if you're Jeff Bezos. But again, nothing is a problem when you're Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, quite.
I think some really interesting polling out today saying that the country does now support increase to defence spending, which speaks to what we were discussing earlier. But if you break it down, I think 27% of people support cuts to welfare in order to boost defence spending, which is higher than supporting cuts to housing, education or health. But the winner is no cuts. So 38% of people think that no cuts should be made to increase spending to defence. And doesn't this explain the problem that we're in? People want more money for this, want more money for that,
and then you have to
but they're not willing to make sacrifices. We can't fully blame politicians for the indecision when actually the public don't really know what they want either.
Yeah, but also you've got to be brave enough as a politician to go, no, this is the right course of action. It may make me unpopular in the short term, but ultimately I know what I'm doing is right by the national interest, and actually maybe for people. People will write in now and shout at me, but I do also think since COVID we've become almost a bit spoilt as a population, and there is an expectancy that we should be covered.
Here's my hand, put something in it.
Cover me for everything, energy crises and whatever else the government must step in. So I think if a third of people, and actually, listen, you should be leading things, not because polls say it, because actually you probably reckon it's right and try and frame it around the polling, I think, as Tony Blair used to try and do. But if a third of people think it, I think that's quite decent numbers. And again, you know, how long are we going to keep running this down the road otherwise?
I mean, I think the point about national service that was made during Kemi's speech is quite interesting, because I think the thing about defence is that a lot of people, because it's not a domestic issue, they don't see it as a domestic issue. They see it as, you know, war is something that happens elsewhere. So they're always prioritising their own sort of front door issues. But I think if we did have a return to national service, and I think particularly if you were able to sort of combine that with a sort of welfare, I think it would make people understand the armed forces better and make them respect them better, make them see what it is that they actually do. It might encourage some people to actually have careers in the armed forces. It would just bring because I think Britain has always had this slightly odd attitude towards the armed forces, which is a bit sort of, you know, it's all a bit, because we're a pacifist nation essentially, and I think
Sunak floated in the election, didn't he? Some form of national military cadet service.
It wasn't even compulsory.
No.
On the doorstep, it played so badly.
It was a bit desperate, wasn't it? Because it was desperate times.
But
it wasn't thought through.
Well, it disappeared after about 2 days.
But I think what COVID shows us is that we were really unprepared for COVID.
Yes.
And we can't be unprepared for a war with Russia.
Sarah, I'm so sorry to cut in, but we are just going to briefly cross back to Robert Jenrick. That press conference is still going on. Robert Jenrick reform.
For Brits to want to do that. And the taxpayer, as a result, is paying for thousands of people in that area to be on benefits, with all the social problems that go along with that. Hundreds of households where kids are growing up, where their parents don't work. Towns feeling left behind. That cannot be the right way for our country to proceed. I want to change that. This will finally make the change that we need. And I think it is one that millions and millions of working Brits will get behind. That for the first time in my lifetime, a Prime Minister and a Chancellor will say, we are going to put British workers first. And the good businesses out there who choose to hire a local Brit will be rewarded for doing that. Frankly, that should have happened a very long time ago. I've got Izzy Addison from PA. Izzy.
Thank you. Hi, Izzy Addison from Press Association. So can I ask about your reaction to the decision to ban social media for under 16s today?
Look, I'm a parent myself of young girls, so like every parent, I've spent a lot of time talking to my kids, to my wife, to our friends and family about screen time, about what our kids are watching. I'm as concerned as anybody else about harmful content that they might see. So I understand where this came from, that it is well-intentioned, but Nigel and I are very sceptical about this. We think it is very impractical, that is highly unlikely to succeed and deliver the outcomes that it aims to do. You only have to look at the uptake of VPNs by people across the country immediately after the Online Safety Act came into force. Nigel said previously that we should look at the experience in Australia before making a judgment. And as far as I can see, the evidence from Australia is very mixed. A majority of the young people in Australia who are subject to the ban there are still on social media. They're still using it because they're smart. They found a way around this. So it doesn't feel to us like this is the right way to proceed. We're also very worried that this will be a backdoor route into mandatory ID, where everyone, frankly, regardless of their age, is going to have to start to put in their ID, a massive erosion of privacy online for the first time. And as Nigel said this morning, there are better ways to approach this. We are much more interested in whether you could use technology like the handsets that are available to young people as the route, so they don't have access to some of the harm.
Well, that was Robert Jenrick, Reform's Treasury spokesperson, speaking about a new policy to prefer British workers in the tax system.
And we've got some breaking news for you. The decision to ban Palestine Action as a terror organisation was lawful, says the Court of Appeal.
Well, 3 judges ruled in February that the then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's decision to prescribe Palestine Action under the Terrorism Act 2000 last year was unlawful, following a legal challenge from the group's co-founder.
Got the panel with us. Just very briefly, Matthew, are you disappointed?
No, I wouldn't say disappointed. I'm a bit concerned at the speed of which we can do this, but the IRGC still continue along, and you know they're not prescribed.
That's the Iranian Republican Guard.
Yeah, I think these people may be annoying to some, and have obviously done parts of criminal damage that have got to be taken seriously. But I think you go after the ringleaders if that's what you're going to do. I think, you know, locking up 3,000 people like grandmas for holding up placards is just a waste of time. It's very. I don't know how I feel about it. I think this is maybe.
What do you think, Sarah?
I agree. Yeah, I think that there's more to be done.
I was surprised they did it.
Yeah, I think there's more to be done, definitely.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
I mean, it feels like a bit sort of slightly low-hanging fruit.
Yes, yes.
But anyway.
Yes. Now, plenty more to come. But first, if you're in search of some elusive holiday sun, we're not getting the broadcast,
continue the panel. Shall we move on to the other main news today,
Yes.
which is that Keir Starmer has confirmed this under-16 social media ban. I mean, we've come a long way in 2.5 years, Sarah. I remember talking about this when I was in Parliament, and everybody saying, don't be ridiculous, it's never going to happen. In fact, Labour bench is laughing at the prospect. Well, how times have changed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I personally don't think it goes far enough. I think you should ban smartphones for under-16s full stop, and then they just can't, none of them can
What, they
have
shouldn't be allowed to have one?
Yeah. Just not, because the problem is not just social media. The problem is online porn. That's what the real problem is. And you can't, and no one is prepared to do anything about that, as I've discovered from years of trying to get people to listen. But the point is that social media is bad, but the reason social media is so bad is because the entire porn industry has polluted pretty much our entire culture.
How do you stop a 15-year-old having a smartphone?
Well, the thing is, as a mother, as a parent, it's very hard to say to your child, no, you can't have a smartphone, because that makes them a pariah.
Yeah.
Because all of their friends have got them. But if none of their friends have got them, then it's much easier to enforce the boundaries and the rules. And it's not going to, it would never be perfect, but it's like the seatbelt law. You know, some people will wear their seatbelts and they won't die in a car crash, and some people won't put them on and they will. And that's just, but you've got to make a start. And I think that banning social media is a problem, but it is not the main problem for me. The main problem is that you give children devices that give them full and unfettered access to the adult world, and that is a problem.
Yeah.
Sarah, we are going to have to leave it there. Sorry, Matthew.
Good answer there.
So sorry, we are out of time.
I think Matthew Talbot wasn't going to agree with you, Sarah.
The porn thing, by the way, we have lots of women that talk about it from a violence against women and girls aspect, which is absolutely right. We need more men. I'm looking at doing a piece of work on it, and I absolutely concur with that. It's corrosive to our society.
Yeah.
Brilliant response.
Well, you heard it here first.
Now, you now are going to get the forecast for some of those top European destinations. I finally get it right.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Occasional showers in places, but actually we've got high pressure building across Europe, so many areas will be mostly settled. We'll see some bits of cloud around coastal areas at times. This should burn back quite nicely through the course of Tuesday. Occasional showers across parts of Spain, Sicily, but actually for most it's going to be dry, settled, plenty of sunshine. This is going to continue through the week, and also temperatures are on the rise as well, pushing into the mid-30s for some towards the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I retired from swimming after Paris 2024 Olympic Games. The main reason being that I just couldn't financially support myself swimming anymore. So I retired at 24 years old and then started working in the corporate world. And then to go to your point, how I got involved, I had a former teammate who joined the Enhanced Games, and he called me and was like, there's a spot on the team for a butterfly swimmer. I said you'd be a good fit. So I just got speaking to him and then spoke with the enhanced team and, yeah, kind of moved on from there.
The lines aren't crossing, are they, between proper, I say proper, and with respect, you know, when we look at Olympic sports, etc., where drugs are not allowed, this is almost a completely separate thing, right? And there's no blurred lines between the two of them.
We're in a different league. We're doing something completely different, right? Are we swimming the same events? Are we running the same events? Yeah, but we're not competing against the athletes in the other league.
GB News. Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
3 legendary builders have become internet cookery stars by knocking up hot dinners in their transit van. It's White Van Scran. Let's now speak with the builders Nathan and Pedro Moore and Archie Price. Lads, you've become internet legends. Pedro, you're the chef, and I believe you're about to knock us up some White Van Scran. Over to you.
I'm going to do a quick omelette for you right here, right now. Quick omelette. This is how we do it. Straight in pan. Are we classed as legends then?
Yeah, you're legends, mate. So tell us what's going on here. You're pouring, what is that, batter? Here you go. You're chopping up a pepper, what, with a Stanley knife?
Yeah, so now straight in. Fresh blade. Every time.
All right, and what's going into this, lads? What are you doing for us here?
Salt, pepper, onion, garlic. It's like easy, fun cooking. You put whatever you want in it.
The People's Channel. GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The Sheldon Junior School in Derby, they noticed that children were failing to develop adequate social skills, and coaching youngsters in chat, etc., was important. I really do think we've got 1 million young people out of work right now, and I truly believe because of mobile phones and because of social media and because people are stuck in their bedroom, they are losing the art of conversation, and I think it's tragic.
Families should be talking.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's been such a huge shift because this is a primary school, and they're basically saying don't give smartphones to primary school aged children. Wait till they're in secondary. But I would say that most parents are thinking that now. Millennials, we're much stricter about screen time, much more so than, say, the generation before us.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. British Armed Forces have intercepted and seized a Russian Shadow Fleet vessel in the English Channel. It's the first operation of its kind.
About them in time, because there's been hundreds passing through the channel. Anyway, we have promised and tried to get him to you before, but we have now got GB News national reporter Will Godley, who is there for us right now. Will, morning. Where's your boat?
Andrew,
Where's your
Miriam,
dinghy?
good morning. Where is our boat? Our boat was that one right there. I can tell you it goes incredibly fast. It was incredibly choppy. I've only just dried off. We've managed to get back on dry land, but it's been quite a tale. We'll be bringing it to you throughout the afternoon on GB News. We tried to get as close as we possibly could to that Russian Shadow tanker. Now, ordinarily, you're allowed about 100 metres away from another vessel. We weren't going to go any closer to 150 metres because we didn't want to inflame any tensions, but when we got about 500 metres away, the Royal Navy approached us on an incredibly fast speedboat. Soldiers, Royal Navy soldiers on board, armed with assault rifles, asking what we were doing, telling us do not dare get any closer. And obviously, when you have a gun pointed at you, you're not going to do that. And so we were able to get as close as we could to that boat. We could see exactly the details on board from that footage captured from those Marine commandos as they fast roped down onto the boat and they continued their search. Well, that boat now anchored about 3 miles out to sea there, and it's going to be held there for environmental and safety reasons as this NCA investigation continues. They've so far arrested 1 person on suspicion of sanction offences. There are still 24 crew members on board, and today it's a hive of activity activity, even though that ship anchored there. Many Royal Navy vessels and police boats there, as we found out first hand, as this investigation is continuing. But of course, this is just one of about 700 of these shadow fleet vessels, so perhaps just a small cog in a big wheel when it comes to the Russian operation. But the government, the Prime Minister, obviously keen to point out what a success this mission has been, particularly when it came just days after John Healey resigned as Defence Secretary, because he said the Prime Minister was unable to find money to keep Britain safe.
Newsroom and I are fascinated to know, were you tempted to say to the Navy, shove off, we're carrying on?
Well, we wanted to. We wanted to get far closer, but there was no way they would let us. There was a Royal Navy little rib speedboat that could go far quicker than we could go, even though we had probably about 500 horsepower in our engine, 250 horsepower engines, but also a big police boat as well, stopping us, checking our credentials. That slowed us down for about half an hour as well. So, unfortunately, we were a little bit outnumbered.
Well, Godley, thank you very much.
Paranoid, the Royal Navy.
Well,
it's a good news story.
I'm quite glad the Royal Navy is paranoid, although I was sad that Will didn't get any closer.
It's a good news story. They finally detained one of these wretched tankers. I think we should take the oil too.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer this morning, the other main news today, has confirmed that under 16-year-olds will be banned from accessing social media.
Broadcaster and podcaster Lewis Oakley joins us now. Lewis, has it got any chance of being enforced practically?
I really doubt it. I mean, one of the worrying things about this is if you ban these, where are the kids going to go? They're a lot more savvy than Keir Starmer. They'll have the VPNs on very quickly. You might be pushing them into darker corners of the internet for all we know. I mean, this really is not something that should have been rushed out on the back of a napkin from, you know, whatever he was thinking last night. I think that this could have real implications for young people. And we've seen in Australia, I think I saw a report the other day that said a third of kids there are still using social media. They've just got the VPNs on, or they figured out a way to bypass the age checks. It's just not practical.
They've used different devices and changed their date of birth, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is just odd. And looking at the list of some of the things that they're planning to ban, I was shocked to see YouTube on there. Now, I know from people in my family, YouTube has become somewhat of a resource for revision. You know, sometimes they may not understand the concept of something, so they'll go on social media like YouTube and actually watch someone explain it. That, you know, to say that these sites, and there have been harms, and I'm not trying to underplay that at all, but to say that they're blanket bad and we've got to blanket ban them is just such an odd thing. It's not really preparing the kids for the world they're going to grow up in. I mean, under these proposals, what we're basically saying is once kids get to 18, we're going to hand them a bottle of vodka, a driving license, and social media and think that everything's going to be okay. I mean, I've got young kids. I've got 3 kids. One of them is 17. And I think it's on parents to be helping them navigate social media, you know, having open conversations. Have you seen anything that's alarming you? Have you seen any, you know, manosphere content? Well, let's have a discussion about it. Banning stuff, I just don't think that that's going to work. I want to navigate with my kids and, you know, through those early years, say, look, this isn't right. What you've posted is not good. That's going to be there forever now. And, you know, have those conversations with them rather than at 18, here's the keys, off you go. That doesn't seem like it's going to work out well.
Well, Lewis Oakley, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Sorry it was brief, but we are reaching the end of Britain's Newsroom.
Yeah, big, fascinating programme. Of course, we've got the Prime Minister at G7. He'll be there for some of the week, and I imagine there'll be some interesting conversation with Donald Trump.
Absolutely. Well, that's it from Britain's Newsroom. We'll be back, of course, at 9:30 tomorrow, but we're going to leave you in the capable hands of Tom and Emily, who are up next with Good Afternoon Britain.
See you tomorrow.
Well, yes, Keir Starmer is off to the G7 summit, but could it be a pretty awkward one? Donald Trump has words over defence, perhaps also over immigration too. And, of course, taking on the US tech firms. Could it be tricky?
Also, is the Prime Minister scrabbling around for a last-minute legacy? We'll get into all of it, of course, in just a few moments' time.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab a chance to live the summer of your dreams.
With a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in tax-free cash to be won.
Someone really has to win it, and it could be you.
For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK. Oh, thank you.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB Newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team